everyone. I hope everyone has had a good day today. It's funny, I've sat here for the last several hours trying to figure out the stories that I wanted to do for today. And the one that popped up on the radar had no intention of doing, but I ended up kind of falling onto it as I listened to the interview, and the interview was annoying the hell out of me. So this is where we are. Squarely in the context of the United States today and squarely on the planet Earth. Howard Schultz, the billionaire from Starbucks. This is always a fascinating thing to me, that a billionaire doesn't have to run in city council, doesn't have to run in other offices, just by virtue of being a billionaire is somehow qualified to hold public office. Not just public office, the office of the presidency. Again, by virtue of being a billionaire. No other qualifications apply. The wild part about this is CNN has taken this with all the gravity in the world, even though he's technically not in the race. He is considering running as an independent because the Democrats apparently have moved too left to him. He was offended perversely by the Medicare for All thing and by the income, by the 70% tax on the top tax bracket. I want to play this interview. This interview is massively out of touch. There is an atavistic self-interest that runs through all of this when these billionaires are looking at the public saying, yes, I know I have $1 billion, but you can't have the things that you want. And I want to delve into some of this stuff because some of this is utter nonsense. And even in the way he answers the question, it's like no facts, no information need apply. I'm a billionaire, and just because I say it, it's absolutely true. Fact of the matter is, how did he get to be that billionaire, right? I mean, I would argue the billionaires shouldn't exist. Ultimately, your society, in order for him to be a billionaire, let's go with the Starbucks thing. However he got there, it started with this thing of people working for him. And, you know, a person could work for him for 30 years. And when they leave that company, they're leaving that company with just the skin on their backs. It's like, thank you for your service, but hit the bricks. And mind you, he's not becoming a billionaire without the assistance of human beings to get him to the point of being a billionaire. Meaning, the people who work for him, who use their energy, their thoughts, their mind, their bodies in order to go and do a particular task, those are just human beings. The human beings that are coming into the building in order to purchase that particular product. Both of those things are intrinsically necessary for him to become a billionaire. It is a little rich, the billionaire, who completely and is totally dependent on the population itself for him to become that billionaire and to sustain himself is that billionaire looks at the population and says, yes, all of this money that I've accumulated, and yes, I've accumulated on your backs, I've accumulated, couldn't do it without you, but thanks. This is all mine. And in a society that has certain requirements, you can't have those things. Like, it is better for 20, 30 million people to go without health care than it is for me to be taxed at a higher rate. Mind you, it's a tax that I'm probably not even going to notice per se, and it's a tax that's not affecting like 99% of the population. But that's worse. It is better for me to have my cash than it is for people to have health care. I find that to be an amazing thing when these guys are entirely dependent on the population itself for them to become who they are. Let's stop pretending as if this is all radical self-interest, where this guy just became who he is based purely on his own merit and on his own strength. Who he is entirely dependent upon the public allowing him to be who he is. Creating this distinction between himself and the public is nonsense. I guess my point is this. In some respects, the people who work in this country, who do all of the labor in this country, should share the benefits of that labor, meaning the wealth of that labor that's created by that labor. He didn't do it on his own. It is entirely dependent on us. This is kind of the point I'm trying to nail home. The point that he is a billionaire, he got there at some basis on human beings themselves. And I understand at a certain point money starts to make money on its own. It's like money starts to expand on its own. But I'm just making the point of the very basic of the company itself. You know, Walmart, same thing. all of those human beings go into that company and do a particular job, and they may do that job for years. And at the end of it, even though their labor was created enough wealth that made somebody billions of dollars, they leave with the skin on their backs, many of which in poverty. I'm asking the question, is that fair? I'm making the point that that is not fair. We have a societal structure, and to some degree, that billionaire needs to pay his fair share. And if that billionaire did pay his fair share, maybe you could afford that health care. Maybe we could afford education or high-speed rail, all these other things that make a society what a society is. Let's take a look at the video. I don't want to go too far into it. I want to show it for itself. Democrats are angry at this guy because this guy is going to run as a radical centrist. He's like, I'm the most centrist of centrists can be. I'm at the center of center. Now, they are thinking he's going to take votes away from whatever centrists we try to run in the race. I don't know if that's going to be true. I don't necessarily care. This is a democratic process. Anybody can run. They put their ideas on the table and they go for it. Let's take a look at, and I believe that is somewhat of an absolute, this idea of browbeating people for running in the race is nonsense. But I would say, though, what are your qualifications other than being a billionaire? And if this was anybody else, they would have been like, hey, that guy needs to be in city council first. That's what they always tell Jill Stein. Let's take a look at the video.
For all, in your words, he's not American.
It's not that it's not American, it's unaffordable. So let me be very clear.
Because you called it not American.
Healthcare has been central to my entire life. We've just talked about that.
He called Medicare for all un-American. That's amazing. He's not engaged in it. He said, well, it's not un-American, it's unaffordable. All right, let's keep going. Let him explain. Let the billionaire to explain to us why healthcare is unaffordable. And look, I'm arguing this even within the capitalistic tax structure, meaning based on the rules of the game as they are present. Is it affordable or is it unaffordable? This guy is talking out of his ass. I mean, I would imagine there's a certain self-interest. If you're a billionaire, you want to tell people that that stuff is unaffordable because you don't want to pay your fair share. I mean, that's what it boils down to. And again, we roll the dice. And in some cases, the people, don't necessarily do well in society, but in other cases, some people do. And fact of the matter is, they breathe our air, they walk on our streets, they deal with our police force, they deal with our fire department. Yeah, pay your fair share. You're using the societal framework in order to become as wealthy as you are. Yeah, there's a tax on that. Pay your fair share. Let's keep going. It's not that it's unaffordable, you just don't want to pay your fair share.
The first company in America to provide comprehensive health insurance to part-time people. I know a lot about this issue. It's deeply in my heart. Now, what I believe is that every American has the right to affordable health care as a statement. I
don't know what that means. I never know what that means when they say that. You're not saying Medicare for all, so that's off the table. So what are you saying? What does that mean? If a person is in dirt poverty, how is that person going to be able to afford health care? I guess if a person is homeless, what does it mean to have affordable health care? Not much at all, right? He can go into the emergency room, but ultimately at the end of the day, there's no idea for this thing of health care. You have people who are rationing insulin because they can't afford, the medication itself. You have people who are not necessarily going to the doctor because they can't necessarily afford to visit. I guess, what does affordable health care mean in the context of people who are at the very low rung of society? If you can't afford it at any price, then what does it actually mean? I have no idea what that statement means. Let's keep going though. They always say it.
I also believe that the Affordable Care Act under President Obama was the right thing to do to provide over 30 million people who did not have insurance to get insurance. But now that we look back on it, the premiums have skyrocketed, and we need to go back to the Affordable Care Act, refine it, and fix it. In addition to that, we need corporations to have more skin in the game. We talked about that earlier. And we must have self-interest and the lobbying efforts of the pharmaceutical companies come to the table with a level of transparency to lower the cost of prescription drugs.
Why would they do that? Like, if you know that you can essentially exploit people who are going to require a particular drug, and you can inflate the price of that particular drug to astronomical rates, because at the end of the day, they need the drug. They're not going to go without the cancer drug or without the AIDS drug or without whatever. Of course you're going to do it, right? The whole point of it is to maximize profit. No, you may not be too egregious because you don't necessarily want to draw attention to yourself. But yes, you're going to push it to whatever you can push it in order to make as much profit as you can make from it. How do you constrain something like that? You can constrain something like that by making the government the first and only buyer. Meaning, if you're going to sell anything in this country, you have to sell it to us. You can't sell it to the population. That would force the drug companies to lower the cost of those drugs. But if you're putting a situation where you're maintaining the system the way it is, you're just trying to browbeat them into lowering the price. Good luck. Even if it may work for a short duration of time, you're not going to get the gains that you may get under the other model that I just mentioned. And those prices will creep back up. They will inevitably creep back up.
So the price tag on it, whether you look at the Urban Institute numbers or the Mercatus numbers, are $32 trillion for Medicare for all over a decade. But Senator Sanders says of his plan, yes, you pay more in taxes for it. The healthcare savings that Americans aren't spending to private insurers is $2 trillion. You say
this is not true.
I'm interested in what you would do and what you would propose as president for the roughly 11.
He just waves it off. This is not true. I love this Jedi mind trick that billionaires can do. They can just say stuff and people just take it as factual. The Mercatus study was a right-wing study that went into the process with the thought of trying to put a knife in Medicare for all. And being somewhat of a bogus process to begin with, some of these numbers were massively inflated and everything else. But put that to the side for the moment. Even when doing this bogus study, they still came out with $2 trillion in savings. That's by their own study. That's by their own standards. What she's saying here is Senator Sanders says that it's going to save $2 million. No, it's not Senator Sanders that says that. It's the Mercatus study that says that. Let's be very clear on that. If you're going to use a study to try to say all that money, $32 trillion, if you're going to throw that number out there, at the very least, you have to own up to the fact that there are $2 trillion saved, even within the context of that plan, that bogus plan. The reality of it is, just by lowering drug costs, we pay twice as much in the world. We don't pay twice as much in the world because we use more healthcare than the rest of the world. We pay twice as much because it's a for-profit system. And logically, if it's a for-profit system, people are going to try to make a profit. That profit is coming out of you. That's coming out of you. You don't need an insurance company. What you need is healthcare. The insurance company is just your intermediary between those two things. If you had the Max Cadillac healthcare plan, just as a standard basis of being an American, what is the point of your healthcare plan? Yes, you may pay an extra amount in the standpoint of taxes, but you're saving thousands. Like, that needs to be nailed down and drilled home. The Mercatus study is bogus. I mean, logically, think about it through. Yes, you're expanding healthcare for the rest of the population, meaning there, I think, like 20 million, 30 million more people are getting healthcare. Good. I don't want a country where people are going without healthcare, especially when we have the capacity to provide it. But you're lowering the amount of the money people pay for drugs. Just by virtue of the study, you're lowering the amount of money that you have to pay for healthcare when you go. It's not even free at the point of service, meaning when you go in, you get healthcare. You get the healthcare that you need. It's not something. It is a radical transformation of our healthcare system, but it is an evolution of our healthcare system for the better. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make here. Even when they were trying to go after the plan, they still came up with $2 trillion in savings. Him waving it off like a Jedi. That's not true. I love the supreme confidence, but it's also absolute incompetence. let's be honest, it's not incompetence. He's just being completely disingenuous. He doesn't want to be taxed at a higher rate. That's what it begins and ends with. If these guys get health care, they may start thinking about other stuff like, people getting an education and all. How dare they?
11 million undocumented immigrants currently in this country, not just the Dreamers.
Yeah.
What would you do?
First off, I agree with the Republicans completely that we need strict, stiff border security.
But
not with a wall, which is insanity. So I agree. I also agree with the Republicans, not the Democrats, that ICE has a major role to play in this. But Republicans want to strip mothers from babies and put kids in internment camps. I don't agree with that. I think it's un-American for the Dreamers not to have a pathway to citizenship, and they should be given that. With regard to the 11 million people who are unauthorized, let them get
those 11 million undocumented. In the final analysis, if you run, Howard, and if you run, you take more away from Democrats than Republicans, and we don't know. We don't know what that would be, and I've looked at all the polling back to the exit polls with Ross Perot. We just don't know.
This isn't Ross Perot.
But if that's the final analysis, that President Trump gets a second term and that you pulled more from Democrats, would that keep you up at night?
I would never put myself in a position where I would be the person who re-elects Donald Trump, but that is not what I believe today.
If you love the best of Geico, you're going to really love voting online for your favorite Geico ad. You can even enter for a
the immigration thing is just poll tested. It's just a poll tested response. When people talk about immigration, they agree with Donald Trump that there's issues that needs to be dealt with from the standpoint of our immigration system. They disagree with this notion of a wall, completely disagree with the notion of shutting the government down for it. So that's just the intermediary between those two things. If you tell people, you should abolish ICE, the people will be like, what do you mean abolish ICE? Why do you need to abolish ICE? People have this odd way of thinking that just because something exists, that it should always exist. As if there was nothing before ICE. It was just a void where people were just crossing the border. So the immigration thing, I'm not going to, that's more of a poll tested response. That last response, dealing with this thing of the campaign itself, and whether or not, if he entered the race, would he pull more votes from Democrats and Republicans? The answer is maybe. I mean, for the most part, he's just a centrist Democrat. Let's be honest. And so him saying he's distancing himself from the Democrats, he is a Democrat. I mean, everything that he's saying, for the most part, is just, how's what he's saying different than Democratic Party? Let's say a wing of the Democratic Party. You can say it that way. But what he's saying is not atypical of the Democratic Party with the immigration thing. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are trying to give Donald Trump money for border security. This guy's just talking about border security. Democrats are on board for the exact immigration plan that he's talking about. And as for Medicare for all, not all Democrats are on board for it. And corporate Democrats have been out there trying to fight to prevent Medicare for all from becoming a reality by essentially using the same talking points that he's using. So for all intents and purposes, the guys, you may end up with two Democrats in a race going against Donald Trump, in which case they may pull votes away from each other. It depends on the Democrat that's in the race, though, right? I mean, if you had one Bernie Sanders in the race, then at that point you someone have a FDR Democrat going with a corporate Democrat going against Donald Trump. Who knows? Fred Edwards, born out of Patriot Act, we can ditch ICE, hire more border agents if you must, but eliminate the paramilitary. Yeah, immigration should not be a central issue of the national discussion. Well, not like this. Yeah, Trump has blown this massively out of proportion. I mean, this idea that there's some kind of crisis at the border is nonsense. Jamarl, to what degree, if all, would you say paying someone money is a legitimate way of arguing against them? To what degree, if at all, would you say paying someone money is it a legitimate way of arguing against them? I don't understand that one. Paying somebody money is a legitimate way of arguing against them. Yeah, I don't understand the question. Also, you sent. Yeah, I need you to ask that in a different way. A cured immortal. Also, you gave a super chat the other day that I missed, and I want to call that one out. Pluto is a planet. I think I read that one. TG will run the strongest anti-war campaign in 2020. Tulsi Gabbard will run the strongest anti-war campaign in 2020. Maybe. You know, I would say this. I want her on that debate stage because I want her to put that anti-war campaign up for the American public to have a discussion about. And that part I agree with you on. That would be an amazing conversation. That would be an amazing, amazing conversation. All right. I don't know what that means. I want to know what that means. If at all, would you say paying someone money is a legitimate way of arguing against them? I'm giving you money and this is somehow an argument. I don't understand the question. I'm sorry. All right. I'm going to end this. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through PayPal or Patreon. Thanks all. And Akira Immortal, thank you for your help for the show. And I will see you guys in a few.